We'll start with music and end with music. First up is Rogue Sounds, our monthly roundup of musical acts playing in the region. Music maker, critic, and writer Josh Gross highlights a summer grab bag of performances. Here's Josh and host Jeffrey Riley.
Josh Gross, thanks for joining us once again on the Jefferson Exchange with Rogue Sounds.
Glad to be here, Jeffrey.
You have a great list this month. Not that there are months when you have bad lists, but it seems like there's just a lot to cram in and a lot to talk about.
Thanks. We're getting to sort of peak summer touring season, so there's just a lot of interesting stuff that's starting to come out. I feel like, there's no fires that have started yet or anything, so it's a great time to go see live music. I say that every month, but that's because it always is,
Yeah, it is a good time to enjoy music for sure before we start getting to the gritty part of the summer, which you've already raised the specter of fires. Let's hope those are long, long away.
Or let's just hope they go somewhere else. Like New York, for example, they're having a fun time with our smoke, and we're like, see how the other half lives,
It is kind of interesting to see how the other part of the country is like, oh, wow, this happens to them all the time. Yes, it does. Oddly enough, the very first song we have to play this month is called The Fire, and it's from Jenny Don't and the Spurs, who are playing Roseburg's Sunnyside Theater on the 7th of July. So let's listen to a little bit of The Fire. Once again, some yummy grooves in there on the way to the vocals.
Some yummy grooves indeed. Yeah, we've talked about this a bunch on the show, Jeffrey, but it's kind of like there's a big distinction between country and Western music. They're two very different things, Country is really kind of like the Nashville pop, it's like a rural thing, but it's really almost more suburban music at this point. Like Western is really the word cartoonish feels wrong, but it's really much more stylized. It's almost like you see it where it has you expect people to be wearing cowboy hats and, costumes and stuff like that. And to really sort of lean into those themes, not just visually, but sonically. And I think you can hear that a lot with Jenny Don't and the Spurs. Even the fact that they're called the Spurs, it's that's not a subtle name.
No, that's true. Yeah.
But it's really you hear that and you're like, oh, this could be a Sergio Leone score, or something like that. It really, but it makes it feel like you just get more, to me at least, I get so much more involved in it, aesthetic, from a sonic aesthetic, because it's not just oh, there's a little hint of sort of rural nature to it. It's oh no, this is its own sort of it's painting a picture with the sounds and with the songs and the stuff that really is just, I get lost in it. I love this, and I think this band is fantastic. They've been doing a lot of touring lately, and they're just really sort of one of the really great up-and-coming groups in this sort of cartoonishly fun, cowboy western, sort of style of music.
It is fun, isn't it? Not quite cosplay. I mean, it's deeper than that, but it's fun.
No, it's not cosplay, but it really is just leaning into the vibe. It's it's not just saying, oh, we're going to do just a hint of twang, but no, let's just go on. Let's just do full on cowboy music, And even if you're not actually living the cowboy life, it's right, but it has its own sort of, there are scales that really just evoke that vibe. There's particular instruments. There's sort of patterns of singing. It's it paints such a beautiful picture. It's fun.
It really does. Okay, so Jenny Don't and the Spurs, that's tonight, July 7th at the Sunnyside Theater in Roseburg. We move on to later in the month, and a real change in styles here. If we're talking about Western music, this is far west. This is coastal music, surf music. Let's go to Franks and Deans coming to Johnny B's in Medford on the 19th of July, and this one is called American Jesus. Once again, you made it hard to cut these things because I'm really just enjoying the music as we go along.
Oh, that's so fantastic to hear. So Frank and Dean's wonderful, wonderful band. They're out of Las Vegas, and they kind of got their start as doing Rat Pack covers, but as like pop punk. And the 4 players who grew up all like singing barbershops. They have like wonderful like harmonies, and but they also grew up liking like punk rock and roll bands. So they decided we're in Vegas, we're gonna lean in. You know, they did all the Martini, the Lady is a Tramp, and all that. But as you know, big loud rock and roll songs. And when they tour, they travel with a burlesque dancer. So they just do the whole show, and they're wearing like tuxedo T-shirts. And their most recent album, they decided to flip the script a little bit, and they took all the pop punk songs that they've been listening to, and they turned them into surf music. So that one was actually that we just listened to. It's originally by Bad Religion. It's one of their big songs, American Jesus, and it translates so well. And just this is a really fun band to see live. It's like, again, you kind of get lost in the moment, lost in the aesthetic, and they just really try to put on a full show. They've got that whole Vegas let's do the whole thing. Let's go all in on it.
Yeah, I always appreciate that moving of like, they got this idea from these guys. Let's turn it into this. The transformation into a different genre.
Well, because I'm generally an enemy of the cover bands but I draw a distinction between covers and standards. Like covers is when you're just trying to do exactly the same song, exactly the same way, but you get kind of a generation loss where it's like you're just like, this is weird. I'm watching someone play a Rolling Stones song, but it's not the Rolling Stones, and it just sort of feels sad. But when you take a song and you like reinvent it and make it your own, that's like the grand musical tradition. That's, the Great American Songbook, where it's the jazz players all played the same 28 songs, but they each played them their own way, and it was what they brought uniquely to that particular composition that made it, compelling. And I think these guys are real masters of that because they took up songs from that era, these sort of like jazz, big band stuff, and they said, no, let's do it the way we grew up, in the music we grew up listening to. And then they took the music we grew up listening to and they said, let's do it in the way that the people who liked Frank Sinatra would suddenly be able to get to. So it's a fun genre mash, and I think it really is like, even if they're playing other people's compositions, it's entirely their own. And to me, that's kind of like they found that sweet spot, and they're a lot of fun to see live.
I've never heard you call yourself an enemy of the cover bands before. I'm envisioning a T-shirt now with your picture on it.
Yeah, I've always said the cover band and the sports bar are natural allies in the war on good taste.
Josh Gross is with us once again on the Jefferson Exchange with this month's edition of Rogue Sounds. We've already talked about Jenny Don't and the Spurs on the 7th of July tonight, Franks and Deans at Johnny B's in Medford on the 19th, and on the 18th at the Brit Festival, Elle King. Here is Elle King doing America's Sweetheart.
I'm not America's sweetheart. My hands are dirty and my heart is cold. Them boys I've been with say I got no soul. When I meet another honey at the bar, I'll think it's funny when I break his heart. My kind of medicine is whiskey straight. I got a mouth to put you in your place, and they said I'll never be the poster type, but they don't make posters of my kind of life. So kick out the jams, kick up the soul, pour another glass of that rock and roll, turn up the band, find a hole, gonna lose control tonight. What do you want from me? I'm not America's sweetheart.
Okay, I definitely would have been clapping along with the clapping part if I didn't have a live microphone in front of me. There's just so much fun in the song. Yeah.
It's so much fun. This is definitely much more on the countryside. She's a big sort of in that, like, the country pop. But man, does she have a voice. And it's just like, it just drives forward. And you just like want to pump your fist and go like, yeah, go for it. It's a big, brassy personality and a lot of fun,
Absolutely. So while we're on the subject of big, brassy personalities, let's move on from Elle King to talk about the Black Sheep Brass Band coming to the Jefferson Center for the Arts. Same night, actually, it turns out, in Mount Shasta. And this one is called, well, you'll hear what it's called by the end.
And the thing I always say is, like, one, I just love brass bands. Like, if you've never had the chance to see one live, it's a really surreal experience, because it's one of those times where you really understand the idea that music is a physical force. Because if you're close enough to them, you actually feel the air coming off of the horns.
Wow.
You can, feel the rhythm and all those things. And that's a really exciting, visceral way to do it. But it's also, there just aren't a lot of brass bands, because it takes a lot of people to make it happen. And holding a band that big together, it's like you can usually only do that as part of an institution, like an orchestra or like a marching band at a university or something like that. And the only place in America that really has like a really strong tradition of just sort of like, wow, we just do brass bands, is really New Orleans. So most of the rest of the country, you don't get a chance to see them very often. So I always say, like, if you get a chance, go, because, like, for me, I generally only get to see a brass band on the 4th of July, and man, do I love the 4th of July parade, because there's so many brass bands, and it's so fun. They come down and you just feel it in your chest, and you could, like, 2 blocks away, and you're like, yes, let's do this.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
A lot of great
Bring
musicianship.
on the John Philip Sousa. I am ready.
So Black Sheep Brass Band, again, will be at the Jefferson Center for the Arts in Mount Shasta on the 18th of July. Now, we move into August, because we're not sure when we'll have you back for the next edition of Rogue Sound. So we move on to August 5th at Johnny B's in Medford. And this is David Lee Bahart, and a lot of words here. You need to listen closely.
I like rap music, but I don't like it telling about killing. I like rap music, but I want it to be safe and cool. I like rap music, but I don't like when they disrespect ladies. They have them children shaking their booties in a disrespectful way. I like rap music, but it's got to tell the kids to live right. There's power and unity and working together, not segregation or racism. I like rap music, but I don't like it preaching against the law. I like rap music, but I like a good message to be through it all. Teach your kids to go to school and respect their parents too. Teach your kids to respect the law. They'll live a long life through it all. I like rap music, but I don't like those swear words. I like rap music, but I don't like the destructive people that do it.
All right. Well, there's much more, but obviously David Lee Bahart saying I like rap music, except for all the reasons that rap music exists.
I wouldn't call that all the reasons that rap music is. I think there's a cultural change that sort of overtook the medium, over probably in the 90s. I mean, when it started off, rap music was mostly it was almost square dance calling, and it really, in the 70s and the 80s, it was much more about sort of emceeing the party than it was, sort of the what Ice Cube called independent journalism that took over in the late 80s and 90s. So David Lee Bahart, which if you're unfamiliar, and no shade if you're not, he's a sort of odd media personality who kind of first came to prominence on it's called the Tim and Eric Show on Comedy Central. And he's a sort of odd mix of musician and puppeteer and sort of surrealist comedian. And, when Iggy Pop said, the problem with rock and roll is there's so few genuine madmen in it, this is exactly the kind of guy that he was talking about. David Lee Bahart's shows are strange and awkward, and at times they're very uncomfortable, but you'll never see anything else like him.
All right.
And he tours with an electronic producer and composer and a full band, and he does his sort of weird songs of, like these, and he tells stories from his life, and sometimes he brings out puppets, and it's an experience. And like I said, he's a true character, and if you have the chance to see something unique, I say do it.
All right, Josh Gross, we're out of time for this month's edition of Rogue Sounds. Thanks for joining us once again on the Jefferson Exchange.
Always glad to be here, Jeffrey.
Full list online at jeffexchange.org.